In this lecture, we are going to begin a series on assessing vendors. In this lecture, we're going to start with some general considerations when it comes to choosing a vendor. We're going to spend most of our time talking about due diligence. And so when it comes to conducting research on a vendor, what are some things that you should have in mind? And we will conclude with a short discussion on service level agreements or SLAs. As for general considerations, it's important that all organizations understand that they are reliable for vendor data handling practices. That means that if a vendor is processing or storing data for you and there's a breach, that your organization is ultimately responsible for that. And so performing due diligence on potential and future partners is very important. Similarly, you don't want to make these types of decisions in a vacuum. It's very important that you get stakeholder input throughout your organization. And so before you enter into a contract or agreement with a vendor, it's important that you perform due diligence on that vendor. Essentially, you're doing your homework to make sure that they're going to be able to follow through with all of the agreements and that they're going to be able to provide the products and services that they agree to. A number of things that you should have in mind include the vendor's financials. Are they in good financial condition? For example, if your contract is going to be for, let's say, 6, 12, or 18 months, based on their financial statements, does it look like that business is going to be open for that long? Similarly, do they have any type of insurance, whether that's cyber liability insurance or any other insurance they'd need to support the contract? Do they have an incident response plan? And is that incident response plan flexible enough to accommodate your organization's incident response plan? What is their general reputation in the market? Do they have security and privacy controls in place? And can they provide evidence demonstrating the efficacy of those controls? If you're going to be transferring data back and forth, what are going to be the points of transfer and how are those points of transfer going to be secured? And when it comes time for the contract to end, how will any data that you own that they process or store, how is that data going to be disposed of? We refer to this as post-contract data disposition. And with regards to this data disposition, there is a standard that comes from the Fair and Accurate Credit Transaction Act, or FACTA. FACTA was enacted in 2003, and there are two major rules that most privacy folks know about when it comes to FACTA. The first rule is the red flag rule. You don't need to know that right now, so don't worry about that one. What you do need to know about is the disposal rule, and that's all you need to know. You need to know about the FACTA disposal rule, and that this is a standard for post-contract data disposition. And in short, the disposal rule just outlines the different actions that need to be taken in order to prevent unauthorized access of disposed data. 4 other considerations with regards to due diligence include ensuring that the vendor has a training and awareness program. If you're looking at bringing on folks to help you process privacy impact assessments, for example, or handle or process any type of personal data, are those folks, those contractors, are they provided the training and awareness necessary to carry out their responsibilities? If your organization were to do an audit of this vendor, would they be able to perform the documentation necessary to demonstrate their compliance? If you fall under the jurisdiction of the GDPR, of course, we want to make sure that we have a data protection officer assigned as required. And finally, you may consider any certifications that the organization has. Again, certifications like ISO 27001 demonstrate that an organization has met a certain standard of privacy or security requirements. Finally, you need to know the term Service Level Agreement, or SLA. This is a contract between the service provider or the vendor and perhaps you, the customer, as an organization. The service level agreement outlines the expected level of service, responsibilities, and performance metrics. And the SLA can include privacy, cyber, and regulatory requirements. For example, privacy responsibilities, the incident response protocol that needs to be followed, and should there be a breach, who is ultimately responsible for that breach. In this lecture, we have begun a series on assessing and working with vendors. General considerations include understanding that your organization, should you work with a vendor, are ultimately responsible for the vendor's data handling practices. Before entering into an agreement, in fact, maybe even before you start due diligence, you want to make sure that you get stakeholder input throughout your organization. When it comes to conducting due diligence, there are a number of factors that you need to consider. These include financials, cyber insurance, instant response plan, reputation, security and privacy controls, points of transfer, post-contract data disposition, training and awareness for the contractor's employees, auditability of, for example, privacy and security controls, the assignment of a data protection officer as required, and certifications such as ISO 27001. Finally, you need to be familiar with the term Service Level Agreement, or SLA. This is a contract between the service provider and, for example, your organization. It outlines the expected level of service, responsibilities, and performance metrics, and can include privacy, cyber, and any regulatory requirements.